Nigerians living in South Africa have raised the alarm over a fresh wave of xenophobic threats against them by an anti-migrant group known as Operation Dudula. Leaders of Nigerian communities are calling for urgent diplomatic intervention following reports of attacks and harassment allegedly spearheaded by the group, which has been accused of blocking foreigners from accessing public hospitals. The outcry comes amid sustained harassment that began earlier this year, fueling fears of another round of xenophobic violence. In a viral video clip making the rounds, one of the group's leaders was captured ordering foreigners out of a public hospital. Founded as a grassroots campaign, Operation Dudula claims to be fighting illegal migration, drug trafficking, and what it calls the unlawful takeover of jobs and services by undocumented foreigners. Now, let's quickly go through some foreign stories, starting from Ethiopia, which has inaugurated the Grand Renaissance Dam, Africa's largest hydroelectric project, hailed as a game-changer for the country's energy sector, but condemned by Egypt as an existential threat. Towering 145 meters high on the Blue Nile, the $4 billion megastructure is designed to generate 5,000 megawatts of electricity, more than doubling Ethiopia's capacity. Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed, joined by regional leaders, led celebrations marked by lanterns, lasers, and drone displays. Supporters say the dam could power Ethiopia's industrial growth and electrify millions without access. But Egypt, which depends on the Nile for 97% of its water, warns of dire consequences, vying to defend its water rights at all costs. In Nepal, a former Chief Justice, Sushila Kaki, has been sworn in as interim prime minister, becoming the first woman to lead the country after deadly anti-protection protests, which forced Prime Minister KP Sharma Oli to resign. The unrest, led largely by young demonstrators, erupted across Kathmandu, the country's capital, as security forces clashed with crowds, demanding accountability and an end to entrenched corruption. Hours before stepping down, the government restored access to Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, and X, which had been blocked, in a move critics said was aimed at silencing dissent. The turmoil forced an indefinite curfew in the capital and prompted multiple cabinet resignations, including Home Minister Ramesh Lekak, who quit on moral grounds. Authorities announced compensation for the dead and free treatment for the injured, while an inquiry panel is expected to deliver its findings within 15 days. Protesters defied restrictions, setting on fire the homes of senior politicians, underscoring public anger and deepening calls for a new era of political accountability in the Himalayan nation. Britain, France, and Germany have condemned Israel's airstrikes on Doha, targeting Hamas political leaders, with French President Emmanuel Macron calling them unacceptable, regardless of motive. Macron made the comments on X, adding that the war must not be allowed to spread in the region. UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer said the attack risked further escalation in the volatile region. This comes as Hamas says 5 of its members were killed during the strike, but claims its negotiating team survived an assassination attempt. And finally, US President Donald Trump on Friday announced during an interview on Fox News that the suspect involved in the shooting to death of activist and close ally Charlie Kirk had been apprehended. This announcement marks a major step forward for ongoing investigation after the FBI deployed a nationwide search for the suspect in the wake of the shooting during a speaking event at a university in Utah. Professor Femi Otubanjo is a senior research professor at the Nigerian Institute of International Affairs. He joins me now for his thoughts on these foreign developments. Great to have you, Prof, on This Day Live, the Sunday Talk Show.
Good evening. Thank you for inviting me.
Thank you, Prof. Well, let's start with the subject about xenophobia, which is a familiar crisis in South Africa involving other Africans. This time, the blocking of access to public health care against persons that are considered illegal migrants. Some people say, well, it's only blacks that are targeted by blacks, and that, you know, the white population in South Africa is not targeted. And most of the people affected, they are Nigerians, they are people from Zimbabwe, they are people from Mozambique, from Zambia, from broader African countries. And Operation Dudula, the fear is that this may degenerate into violence. Now, people have been calling on the Nigerian government. They've been calling on the South African authorities to prevent an outbreak of violence. Who do you think has the bigger responsibility to address this very quickly?
Well, the responsibility lies with the South African government. Xenophobia will never go away because the problems which underlie xenophobia have not gone away. The massive unemployment in South Africa, the poverty, the illiteracy, and of course the history of emasculation of black people during the period of apartheid. The South African, let's put it, the lower class, feels threatened by foreigners. And that's not something that diplomacy can solve. It is a problem for law enforcement. Law enforcement, of course, there's also a problem for mass education. Nigerians did a lot to help South Africa get out of apartheid. But the information about that is limited to very few of the diplomatic elite. So when you continue to talk about diplomacy in this matter, the reality is that it's not a diplomatic problem. The diplomats can only negotiate that the South Africans be more effective in educating its people, more effective in law enforcement where there are infractions, not duality, because it's a psychological problem. They are resentful of the fact, particularly Nigerians, almost wherever they go, they constitute a progressive, aggressive group that normally does well. We know that in this case of South Africa, the Nigerians that interface with them are mostly traders. They are doing business there. They are doing very well. They are successful, more successful than the average South African. And so there's a cumulative resentment about this. I was reading somewhere on Facebook something of a joke about Nigerians give transport. Something as pedestrian as that, Nigerians give transport money, South African men don't. And so the women are attracted to Nigerians. That's enough to create resentment and over time accumulates into uprising and violence. Right now, it's not, in spite of the report about the hospital case, there's not a major uprising there. But it is something that is there that will not go away. It won't go away as long there's poverty, there's unemployment. 50% of black people don't have jobs. And the benefits of being in a country where apartheid has been vanquished has not percolated to the people. The people are still there looking for and hoping for a day when the economy will reach them. But right now, they take their frustration on foreigners. And foreigners who are also fleeing from their own countries from economic mismanagement, from Zimbabwe, from Malawi, and so on. These are all poverty-stricken African countries who see South Africa as a better place to earn a living. But those in South Africa themselves are either uneducated and ill-equipped to take advantage of available jobs, which are now taken by foreigners. And that is the problem. Xenophobia will continue to be in South Africa. What we want to avoid is targeting Nigerians and this occasional violence and uprising against other Africans. It can be negotiated, but it has to be done through the domestic authorities in South Africa. They have to be, there's weak law enforcement. The people who are instigating violence are not being apprehended and punished. And as long as they have that freedom, you will never stop this unfortunate development.
Okay, Prof, you mentioned hate, xenophobia, extremism. We have a similar situation in the United States with the killing on Wednesday, last Wednesday, of Charlie Kirk, a Trump ally. Hello, sir, can you hear me? Okay, it looks like his talkback dropped there. But Prof, have you fixed it back? Can you hear me now?
I can hear you now. Yes.
Okay, I just wanted you to talk about the spread of extremism in the United States with the killing of the far-right Trump ally, Charlie Kirk, last Wednesday. And now, you know, people who criticize him because of his extremist views, like Matthew Dowd of MCNBC and others, even university professors who, you know, criticize his killing, are now being labeled Kirk murderers, Charlie Kirk murderers. And there's this spread of extremism. Even in the House of Representatives, there was almost, you know, a fight over whether, you know, a minute silence should be observed in his honor or whether the tribute in his honor should be read out. How do you read this situation with regard to extremism, gun violence, free speech under Trump administration? Trump says he's a hero and he deserves a Medal of Freedom, presidential.
Well, it's a man who has borrowed from Trump.
Hello, go ahead, sir. I can hear you.
Yes, we are talking of a man who has lived all his life being a divisive figure. Like Trump, he's a scion of the MAGA movement. It's a close associate of Trump. And you know what that means? It means racism. It means intolerance. It means intolerance of other people's other views, intolerance of other people's. We have a situation in which the professors are targeted for their views, particularly those who have leftist views. They are bombarded by emails and so on, and telephone calls and threats and so on. So Kirk, to put it simply, was not a nice person. he was a fascist. It was like, as Samuel Johnson say, I would like to put it as almost a scoundrel. As he says, patriotism is the last refuge of a scoundrel. But that's what Trump has brought to America. That brought this extremism, intolerance. Trump calls his political opponents enemies. They are not opponents, they are enemies. The rhetoric is to excite the people who share his own views to deal with them. Almost short of calling for people to carry guns and shoot down Democrats. That is the kind of tradition which Charles Kirk facilitated by mobilizing young people around college campuses and holding these congresses, these fairs that at which he was killed. For me, I do not support that kind of approach to disagreement. If you disagree, unfortunately, the person that killed him is also a conservative from a rich home and a very bright student. So it was not, fortunately, a Democrat or a leftist that killed him, which would have created, or even a foreigners, which would have created another scenario. But the reality was that for most of the world who are liberal-minded, who want a peaceful world, a world in which all opinions are tolerated, who want an America in which everybody, the America that was marketed to all of us as the land of opportunity, in which everybody has a right to be there, everybody has a right to express his own view, even if you don't disagree, Charles Kirk will not be missed.
Okay, Prof. Another major development during the week was the crisis in Nepal, well, otherwise referred to as revolution, where the Gen Z in that country rebelled. They burned down buildings, they drove away their officials. The prime minister had to resign. The Supreme Court was burned down. Homes of ministers were burned down, including even the home of the prime minister himself. Now, there is an interim prime minister in place now who will be there for 6 months. She says she can also only be there for 6 months. But are there lessons that we can learn from the example of Nepal in terms of youth resistance, almost similar to the NSAS protests in Nigeria, and also in terms of the social media, how the social media can go out of hand and cause problems?
Well, the social media didn't create problem. The social media didn't create problem in the social media did not create the problem. It is those who wanted to suppress the social media that ultimately instigated the anger of the Gen Z generation. Now, what happened there, that Nepal has always been in crisis. For the last 2 decades, it's been from one, it has had some kind of insurrection, Maoist insurrection. It had the members of the royal family wiped out. It had a king that was almost going to be autocratic, and then, of course, was eased out into a constitutional monarch, and ultimately eased out. So Nepal has a history of protests, of agitation, and so on. But and the fact of the readiness of the people to fight for their own rights. If you want to ask me, what can we learn? That I've been asked this several times. What do you learn? Is that people must take their own welfare into their hands. The basic problem in Nepal is the same thing everywhere: unemployment, corruption, the abuse of power, the preference for the politicians and their families, and poor infrastructure. Those are the same problems that we face in a country like Nigeria. But unfortunately for Nepal, they are 81% Hindu. And we are fragmented into 300 and something groups. Although Nepal is one of the most fragmented countries in terms of ethnicity, about 125 of them, but they are in the same religion. 81% have the same values and can easily mobilize and come together to think alike. We don't have that here. The lesson for us is that we ought to fight for our own rights. We ought to defend our own interests. We have to deal with politicians who are just riding on us. We have to fight corruption. We have to fight privilege. But we are not doing it. We are not doing it because we simply have not evolved that culture. NSAS was a very good attempt, and it had some impact in the subsequent election, where Peter Obi benefited from the votes of youth in defeating Tinubu in Lagos. They need to mobilize the young people. We need them. We need them to have political change. Those of our generation and 2 generations after us seems to have given up. We were just discussing the governor of Rivers State, who is about to be reinstated. No significant protest took place in Rivers when the thing took place. There was no sustained protest. People were just talking on social media and blowing grammar. There was no inconvenience on the rulers. In Nepal, the protest became anti-elite. It's not just anti-government. That's why they were burning the houses of prime minister, of ministers. It was just a protest against the elite who have been complacent in tolerating corruption and incompetence, inefficiencies, and deprivations. That's why the things we suffer here. Those are the things that we take for granted, and we do not do anything. Governments come, governments go, they become richer, They take all our money and we stay and continue to blow grammar. Because we are a fragmented country. We do not speak with the same voice. If a Muslim starts a protest, the Christians will say it because it's a Christian, and vice versa. If an Igbo man does it, the Yoruba man says it's an Igbo plot. If a Hausa man does it, say it's a Yoruba plot. All those things are still holding us back. We still need a lot of mileage to be able to get to a point where the people can come together and push out a government that is incompetent. We are already surrounded by massive corruption.
Well, on that note, Prof, I would like to thank you very much for joining us on this Day Live, the Sunday Talk Show. Thank you very much indeed.